Hey, welcome to the Ordinary Black Professionals. I'm Nicole,
And I'm Stefan.
and this week I'm interviewing Stefan
Yeah. Yeah.
and talking about his experiences of becoming a contractor, why he decided to make the plunge, and if being a contractor is really as lucrative as everyone says it is. Because whenever people are talking about being a contractor, they always make it like that they're going to be making it rain with money.
Mm, yeah.
So let's talk about whether that's really the case or not. Are you ready to
I'm ready.
dive straight in?
Yeah.
Ready to bear open your soul?
I don't know about that, but
So, did you always know you wanted to be a contractor? Because I've got friends who say, "Oh, I'm going to do 5 years working as a consultant, management consultant, and then I'm going to become a contractor." Did you always know that's something you wanted to do?
no, I didn't know much about being a contractor. I didn't know anything really for many years, but I started realizing that some of my colleagues left to become contractors,
Mm.
and then also some of my colleagues were contractors, and so I started working alongside people who were uh, be doing the same job as me and was a contractor, and I started to learn a bit more just by asking them questions about being a contractor, what it's like, how to do it,
Hmm.
what's the difference. And yeah, I just started learning just by asking questions, really. So
Okay.
that's how I started figuring out what it was, and then, if I
Thinking
want
that
to do
maybe
this
this
thing or
could
not.
be
Yeah,
for you.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So then what made you decide to finally take the plunge?
Um, Again, like working with the contractors, seeing what they do, talking to them, and realizing that there's little difference between me and them. Um, just
So you had the same skill set that they had, you would say.
similar, not exactly the same, but essentially, there I had this view that contractors were people that came in and were super experienced
Yeah, that's what I
and
thought
had,
as well.
yeah, crazy amount of skills. And then when I'm working alongside them, they're asking me questions and I'm asking them questions, and I realize they don't know everything and I don't know everything.
Mm,
And so there's actually not much difference between us, um, except the way that we're employed.
okay.
And then I started realizing, okay, so is this something that I wanted to do? And I asked them questions about how it works. Like, how do you get paid? What is it like being here as a contractor? Because I know what it feels like being here as an employee and all the things that I do as an employee, but what's the difference for you? And, you know, just having those sort of lunchtime conversations is how I ended up in this situation.
Okay.
And yeah, what made me take the plunge? At the time, you go through sort of being employed with your employer, and sometimes you know when it's time to leave.
Mm,
And I think I got to that point where I sort of knew it was time to leave, and then I had to make a decision about whether I was going to apply for another job or whether I was going to try and my hand at contracting.
okay. And I've just realized we've dived straight into your experience of being a contractor without maybe even talking about what a contractor actually is.
Yeah,
Some people may not know what it is.
yeah, yeah,
Let's actually just take a step back.
yeah.
I dived in too soon with the questions. So, if you had to define kind of what a contractor is,
hmm
what would you say it is and how it differs from being an employee like what I am?
Yeah. Well, essentially, a contractor is a person or a company who takes on essentially a contract of work to deliver a service.
Okay.
Okay. And so the difference between that and an employee is that employee receives a contract that says you are employed and we will offer you these benefits, etc., etc.
Mm,
But a contractor is offered a contract that says you it's not an employed relationship, it's more of a business to business relationship.
okay, so you're here, you're coming in to deliver this particular piece of work,
Yeah,
and then once you've done that, you're off.
that's it.
And the only thing that, if I'm an employer, the only thing that I give this contractor is a salary, like money.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. So sometimes
No,
the
no
contract could be
benefit.
based on the delivery. So if you deliver this piece of work, I'm going to pay you this money. or if you deliver this piece of work every week that you're here or every day that you're here, I'm going to pay you this piece of money, this amount of money.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. So when you decided that you were happy to, well, you had explored the different options of kind of what a contractor was, and you decided that you were ready to leave your company, kind of just walk me through what you did. Like, did you have to have a job, a contracting job lined up before you left, or did you have to leave and then look for a contracting job?
Yes, I had to learn this for myself. So what happened is first, in the process of learning about contracting, I started to get the feeling and just talking to people that maybe this is something that I wanted to do. And so I started to talk to recruiters about, you know, here's my CV. I may be looking to leave my current job,
Mm.
but what do you think? How would my CV do in the contracting market? And some of these recruiters, a lot of them, they hire for permanent jobs, but also for contracting jobs.
Oh, okay.
So when I gave them my CV, they gave me very positive feedback about, oh yeah, you could definitely get a contract. And obviously in their salesy type of way, and I can get you one.
Oh, of
And
course. Of course. Recruiters always seem to think quite highly of themselves.
yeah, so I realized that I had to leave my job first before I looked for a contract because a lot of the contracts they are offered to people who have 1 or 2 weeks notice
Oh, really?
because contractors can have short notices. Because
Okay.
it's then a lot easier to get rid of a contract if you have short notice, the contractor, but also you can, you know, if you're a contractor, leave a lot easier as well.
Yeah, there's no kind of 3 month notice
Yeah.
period or one
Well,
month
some
notice
of them
period.
do have 3 months, and some of them do have, I did a contract, I had a 1 month notice period, just like my
Normal job.
normal job. But
Okay, so
I had to do that, yeah.
how did you find out that you needed to leave, that the notice periods were so short? Is that because
It,
when you were
it,
speaking to recruiters, they told you, oh,
yeah,
you need you to start in 2 weeks' time, sort of thing?
I applied to contracts as I was still employed. They wouldn't really entertain an interview because they said it's just too long to bring you in because I had a month's notice, which is quite standard. It's not that long.
No, yeah.
But yeah, they were just like, we need someone next week. A lot of contracts were like, we want someone in the next week or two to come in
Okay.
straight away. Some contracts, they'll be happy to wait if they get the right person, and most of them should probably say that. But at the time, I wasn't really getting that response, so I handed in my notice first, and in the last 2 weeks of my notice period, that's when I was like applying a lot more.
So did you feel a bit shook? Being like, because we did a poll on Instagram a
Yeah.
few months ago around whether you would hand in your notice without having another job lined up, and I think the most of our Instagram followers said that they wouldn't. They would make sure that they handed in their notice and had a job to go to next.
Mm.
So the fact that you handed in your notice and you've got a mortgage, you've got responsibilities, and you didn't have a job lined up, did you feel a bit nervous?
Um, At the time, I was very confident because I had a lot of positive feedback on my CV. I'd spoken to a lot of recruiters who gave me good feedback. My colleagues had also said, like, oh yeah, I'll get a contract very easily. So, and also it's the IT industry. So I felt like, there's a lot of movement in the industry. It's really hot at the moment. So I thought definitely I'll get one in the next month.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was very confident. I think as you are still applying and not receiving the responses that you want to receive, you get a bit more nervous, right? But at the time, I still was employed, when I was applying. So I was confident at that point.
Okay. And so you were looking for jobs in kind of after you had 2 weeks left of your notice period. Was there anything that you needed to set up before you could take on a contracting job?
Yes. So I think because being a contract or having a contract is a business to business scenario, between the company that you want to work for and yourself, I had to think about whether I wanted to set up a company to do that or not. So there's different ways and you can do that. One is to be a sole trader. So just like any sole trader, you have to have your books in order and all that sort
Yeah,
of stuff, and but you pay tax just like everybody else, income tax. The second option is to have an umbrella company, which is like me go find a company that will take me on. Um, they will pay me a salary, and as part of that,
relationship.
yeah, as part of that relationship, they would um, help me with the business to business relationship between themselves, that company, and the company that I'm working for.
Okay,
So
so
they would do all the
effectively,
paperwork
that's what
and
I was gonna
everything for
say.
me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they do all of that heavy lifting for you.
yeah,
But then you also that I mean, to me, I like to be in control of what's going on. I don't think I'd like that option because they that umbrella company could do whatever, and
yeah,
you want to be in control. I don't know.
yeah, yeah. So I didn't go for that option. I went for the third option to have a limited company. So I set up my own company, um, and through that, I did all the paperwork myself. I got a
Accountant.
accountant who basically helped me set up the company. He was an accountant who's very used to having contractor companies,
Hmm.
so he knew like everything that I needed and set up and all that sort of stuff. And then through that, I set that up, and then when I did get a contract, all I had to do was, give the information, my details, um, bank account, which was a business bank account through the company and all that sort of stuff.
So, okay, so how it works is that, let's say you've got a contract with um, Google, let's say Google will pay that limited company
Yeah,
the salary.
yeah, straight into the limited company bank account.
Okay.
And then I am the director of the company, and the company has one employee who is me,
Hmm.
but it could have many, right? So you could grow your company to have other contractors, and then you essentially be an umbrella company yourself.
Hmm.
And then the company would pay me,
Okay.
right? So I would pay myself basically through the company.
Okay. Okay. We'll talk a little bit about how you went about paying yourself as a limited company in a minute.
Yeah,
But those essentially are the steps that you had to take to get it set up and running.
yeah.
Is it quite easy to do to set up your own company and to find an accountant?
Yes, it's very easy. If you find an accountant who takes on contractor companies all the time, then they will probably have a very simple sort of startup process that they'll go through, and
Okay.
they'll do it for you a lot of the time.
Okay.
But you could set it up 100% yourself as well, and it's very easy to do. You could just do it online in, you know, 10, 15 minutes.
That going like to the gov.uk website type one of those.
Yeah, Company's House is where you need to set up a company. So the government website, and then it's very simple. I think you just pay a few pounds, £13 or something like that. Can't remember to set up a company.
Okay. So very easy to do.
Yeah,
So 2 weeks in before your end of before your job ends, you or before your notice period ends, you're looking for jobs, you set up your own company, you've got an accountant, you're in a good place, you're ready to go. How long does it actually take you to find a job? So when your 2 weeks notice period ends and you're technically unemployed,
yeah,
did you have a job to go into straight away after that, or were you still unemployed for a bit and then you found a job?
yeah. I was still unemployed for a bit. It took
Do
me
you,
a few extra weeks after my notice ended at my job. Um, I think it was maybe between 1 and 2 months it took.
is it that long?
I think so.
Don't remember it being that
I
long.
think so. It took a few weeks. It took a few weeks. Yeah.
Okay. And then during that period, did you feel a bit shook?
Yeah, as the time goes on, you do feel a bit more nervous. I think what it is that the market wasn't. I was not getting that many interviews.
Mm,
Um, I think maybe there was a lot of people on the market and a lot of competition at the time, so I just couldn't. there's a lot of people to compete with, and then other people go for interviews and get it before me. So
Yeah,
I
that's
just
the
had to wait for my shot,
mm.
and then yeah, I got an opportunity.
And that's the thing that's so different with contracting and an actual employee. When a company is looking for an employee, they're wanting to make sure that this person has um, the potential to develop, to grow, that
Yeah,
they're going to fit into the company, that they're going to represent the company well, all of that stuff. Whereas for a contractor, you could have one interview or a couple of interviews and that they'll hire you right then or on that day because they don't really care about your opportunity or how much potential you have. Can you develop? All they want to know is have you got the skill set? Can you start in 2 weeks? Yes, you can. Okay, going to end the search right there and then. We're
that's
not
yeah.
interested in all that other fluffy stuff because we just need you to do this 6 month piece of work and that's it.
Yeah, yeah. So that's a bit more about the interview process as well, because in the interview process for an employee, you'd maybe be interviewed by HR and
Mm.
then also by a director, or then you go through all these different 5, 6 stages. For a contractor, you probably wouldn't even be interviewed by HR. You would
Oh,
just be
really?
interviewed directly with the team or manager that wants you in. Well, that is looking for a contractor to do a particular job,
Mm.
and they'll be very short with the interview. The interview will be like half an hour, maybe even an hour, and it would be like really cutthroat. Just, can you do this? Yes or no. Sometimes they'll say, can you demonstrate that you can do it? Um, what experience do you have doing it? And that's about it. And then you'll be in or out.
So very kind of quick and
Yeah.
straightforward process, but then also one that's quite brutal at the same time.
Yes. Yeah. So I thought, it would be quite good to have like a quite straightforward process, but actually the the shortness and sort of cutthroat of it doesn't give you a lot of opportunity to show how you differentiate. And I guess in some ways they don't really care how you differentiate because you're sort of a short-term hire, you're temporary hire.
Yeah.
So, sometimes it's a long-term hire. There can be contracts that are for senior positions, right? And when I say long-term, it's not like they want a contractor for several years. They would most likely look for someone to be an employee if they want someone for several years. But if they want someone in a very senior position, then they might do a bit more like an interim CTO or an interim director of this or that or whatever it is. They will probably look to ask you a bit more questions, maybe talk to a few more people. But if they want you to perform a certain task or a certain job, then they'll be pretty short with it. They'll say, "Can you do it? Can you demonstrate? Can you show us history of you doing it?" They may again like call up to a reference that you've provided,
Okay.
um, but I've not had anybody do that. Yeah.
Okay. So then you did eventually get that contracting job.
Yep.
Um, so what was it like getting your first pay slip? Or do you even get a pay slip? How does that work?
Um, well, it's definitely not a pay slip. It's what it is. It's you give an invoice. It's a business relationship, right? So you send them an invoice of saying, I've worked these many days. Can you pay me this? And someone approves it internally in the company. Every company is different, right? So they've got their own process. Um, so you send them an invoice, they approve it, and then they pay you, basically.
Okay.
Through the pre-agreed payment method that you've already agreed with them.
Okay.
And that's how you get paid. And another way as well is sometimes there is an intermediary between you. So there's the business that you're working
Oh,
for,
okay.
there's your company, and in the middle there's another company. That other company can actually be the recruitment company,
Oh,
or
right.
it can be another company that the company that you're working for has brought in the middle
Right.
to just handle all that process of the invoicing and paying you and
Yeah.
stuff.
Because when you
So
think about it for the company, like let's say just go back to saying it's Google, you in theory have two ways of paying people. You've got your usual standard way that you'd pay your employees,
yeah,
and now you've also got which is one process, and that could be multiple processes depending on the
Country.
country.
Yeah.
And then essentially you've got another process or set of processes for them paying contractors. So it makes sense why a company would outsource that process to somebody else because, if potentially it's a lot to manage.
Yeah, I think it is because every contractor will have a different bank account, maybe even different payment process, different countries again, if you've got different.
Different tax to pay, student like,
No, you don't pay their student loan tax, you just pay their invoice, right?
oh, okay.
But you may have to handle things like VAT.
Right.
So, um, and also they want some legal protection because there
Okay.
are some laws about being a contractor and differentiating who's a contractor and who's an employee and things like that. So, to give themselves some protection, they put another company in the middle who handle it for them. And technically, I'm being paid by the intermediary company. I'm not being
Right.
paid by the company that I'm actually sitting at their desks.
Right. Okay. Okay. So as we're talking about money, you know, how I've always understood it before you've um became a contractor and how what I've heard other people say is, okay, so if I'm a contractor, I make £500 a day.
Right,
And so £500 a day times by 365, it will give me a total of 182,000 roughly.
right,
Okay. We know that that's going to be a 40% tax. So I take 40% tax out of that, and therefore I'm making 109,000 roughly a year. So therefore I'm loaded, essentially. I'm making loads and loads of money. Is that correct? Is that how you work out how much a contractor takes home? Is it as simple as that?
no, no, that's not correct. So, okay, so not all contractors are paid £500 a day. Contracts, I've
Oh, I
seen a
thought
lot
that
of
was a standard
contracts.
rate because whenever people talk about contracting, I was like, oh, it's £500 a day.
No,
It's never
no,
more, it's never less. It's just a flat 500.
no. 500 is a quite a good rate. Um, if you're very senior, then you could get rates. I'd say I've seen 700s, I've
I've
seen
known
600s.
I've known of contractors being paid 1,200,
Yeah,
fifteen
yeah, yeah.
hundred pound a
You can
day.
get paid over a grand definitely, but those guys are probably in
Yeah,
very
yeah,
high
those are like super
positions.
senior people. Yeah.
But at the standard sort of stuff, I've seen people in 700s, 600s, 500s is a very good rate. But I've also seen a lot of rates for in the 300s and the 400s.
Okay.
So I was offered contracts at 400s, but I was really trying to push for 500s
Mhm.
sometimes. And 300s, I think depending on industry and what you're doing, it'll be different. So in IT, 400s and 500s is a lot more standard. But in other industries, you may see a bit more 300s, you know,
Okay.
people pay, and that's per day a lot of the time. It's a rate per day. They're not paying you that, they're paying your company a rate per day, right?
Mhm.
Um, and the day is not, there's not 365 days. There are weekends, so it's probably around 261 days, weekdays, and that's if you work every day of the year, right?
Mm.
And never take a holiday, a sick day, ever. You
Yeah.
don't get paid if you take holiday. You don't get paid if you take sick because you're not the employee.
Right. Okay. So you don't get those benefits.
No, you get no benefits whatsoever apart from monies paid to your bank account.
Right. Okay.
Um, so yeah, so if you're getting paid 500 and you're doing 261 days, that's about 300 and what the 130,000 pounds a year, which is still good, right? But
It's more than what I'm making.
but that's paid to your company, it's not paid to you. And then through the company, you need to pay yourself. So there's certain things that you need to think about first before you even pay yourself. First, you are employed by your own company or by the umbrella company. But let's say it's the limited company that you set up because it's a lot easier to think about that.
And that's what you did as well.
Yeah. Um, so if I'm if the money comes into my bank account, I first need to think about paying my expenses because I am working for a company. They're not paying my expenses, they're just paying my rate.
And when you
So if I've got expenses, I've got to pay things like travel, right? So if you're traveling, let's say you're just traveling, let's say you live in London, you're getting on the London transport into work, then you can expense that, and you minus that from your company expenses, right? If you are traveling cross country and you have to get a train from one side of the country to the other, you have to expense that. But that is a lot more expensive as well. So that would cost you, £100 a day, let's say. That would be really expensive travel. Yeah, possibly. These trains are really
But you're going to
expensive.
expense it,
Yeah.
but who? I don't understand how it works. You're saying that you expense it and then like who pays for that? I don't understand.
The company does, your company.
Okay, so
So
you're
your
just
company's
taking that
getting a
money
rate.
out of the 130,000.
So you get paid £500 a day, right? Let's say it costs you £100 to travel that day. So you have to minus your £100 from your 500 for the day. Yeah. So you now
But
have made £400 that day.
yeah, but ultimately it doesn't make a difference. You don't actually have to do it.
You have to travel.
Yeah, I know you have to travel, but if you can already afford, why do you have to put it back into the company? That's what I'm trying to say.
Oh, the expenses.
Yeah, it doesn't make a difference. You're not.
It's a lot cheaper for you. If you paid yourself your salary, right? And then after you paid yourself your salary, you have to pay national insurance, you've got to pay income tax, all that sort of stuff. And then you minus from your own personal money in your pocket, your travel money, let's say
Mm,
£100, you're a lot worse off than if you expensed it through the company, right? Because the company doesn't pay any of that tax or stuff on it. And the company pays a lot less tax than you personally pay,
right.
right?
Okay.
Because the company has to pay tax as well as yourself. So
Okay.
you pay your normal national insurance and your normal income tax, but your company has to pay national insurance and corporation tax.
Wait, let's just go back to the expenses.
Yeah, so you have to minus expenses from that money. You have to minus pension from that money because you work for a company as an employee and the company puts money into your pension for a lot of the time, right?
Well, I mean, you're saying you have to minus your pension or whatever. You don't actually. That's not. You don't legally have to do that.
No, you don't legally have to do that.
You could be working for. I mean, I'm sure there must be contractors out there
Hmm.
who have been or even people who own their own, not necessarily a contractor, but have a business on the side, and then the business side makes them money. And they've been working that for years, doing that for years and 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 years, and they've never invested in a pension.
Yeah,
So it's not something you have to do, but
it's
it's
not
something that
something you
you
have
would
to do, but if you're not
recommend.
doing it, then it's not good for your future. You want to have a pension. You want to make sure that once you reach 65, that you've got money that's been building for the last 40 years that's been,
That you can live off.
that's
Yeah,
protected for you.
that you can live off and
Also,
not use state pension.
there are tax benefits to putting money in a pension,
Yeah.
right? So
And I'm
it's the
guessing
best thing for you to do is to take some of that money every month and put it in the pension.
so that's what you'd recommend. But
Yeah.
then okay, so you're saying it's good to set up a pension, and I think it's also good because this is, if you're contracting, more than likely you are earning more than what other normal people would be earning. Um, so you're going to have more income to put into that pension. But then it's a question of, well, where do I go? Usually, like for me, for my pension, I just had to sign on a piece of paper, say, yep, want to have a company pension, and my company just sorted it all out.
Yes.
But now you're a contractor, where do you go to set up your own pension? Like,
Yeah, you basically need to set up your own pension in any pension company that you choose,
so how
right?
did you find
So
it? Did you
you
go on
can
like a
literally Google,
comparison site?
you can Google and just say, um, pension and see what rates come up, who gives you a good
Okay.
pension.
So it
With
require
pension, it's really up to you. You can go for popular pension companies that you see on the TV adverts or
okay.
anything really. It doesn't really matter as long as um, different pension companies, they obviously take your money and put it into shares,
Mm,
and they try and build
invest it.
and they invest it. So whoever's investing the money most efficiently should win, really.
Okay, so
But
that's
yeah,
going to involve a good amount of research. I remember when you were
it
looking
does.
into
Yeah.
the pension, you were researching it for a while.
Yes.
Okay. So you've got that 130K, you have taken some of that money out for expenses, some of that money has gone out for a pension. What
Yeah.
else?
So
Where else does the
there's
money
also
need to
some
go?
expenses as well for equipment that you'll need, because if you get employed by a company, they'll give you a laptop, a phone, all the stuff that you need. Um, but if you're a contractor, you got to provide that yourself,
But
right?
I don't remember
S-
you buying a laptop, a
I
head.
did. Yeah, I did.
Did you buy a laptop?
I did. Yeah, I did buy a laptop. So you need a laptop. Some companies that you go to work for will say bring your own laptop, because we're not going to provide one for you. You're a contractor. Some companies will provide one to you because they want you to use their equipment for security and
Right.
protection, that sort of stuff. But it all depends on the size of the company. But you don't know, what contract you will get. So you definitely need a laptop. Um, it depends on obviously what type of work you're doing and what industry, of course. But those are, there's that
Thing,
type of expense.
things like a headset, things like potentially, I guess, having to expense calls because they're not going to give you
Exactly.
a company phone.
Yeah. One of the really important things as well that you must expense is business insurance, right? Because you're running a business now, um, and you will not be hired by any company without insurance, right?
Okay.
And so I had insurance for, they call it public liability insurance. It's basically if anything goes wrong, the insurance company will step in and try to solve it with money.
Is that
Yeah.
expensive?
No, it's not expensive. It's maybe, it's less than £100
A month
a
or?
month. Yeah.
Okay.
So there's business insurance.
What about things like
Mm.
taxes,
Yeah,
national insurance, student loans?
national insurance is something that you have to pay through the business, right?
Right.
But student loan is not. Student loan is something that the employee pays, right? So when I pay myself, I'm now self-employed
Right.
because I own the company that employs me. So I'm self-employed through that way. And when I do my self-assessment at the end of the year, the self-assessment through HMRC calculates how much student loan I have to pay back, right?
Right. Okay.
Because when I pay myself through the company, I just pay myself like a flat amount of money, um, and I don't calculate on minus all the tax every month. Yeah,
Okay.
but at the end of the year, I then need to inform HMRC how much money I made for the year, and then they calculate that, and I have to pay them a lump sum of all the tax money. So I have to make sure I don't spend all the money that I have been paid for the year.
So let's just say for argument's sake, this is not what you got paid, but let's say for argument's sake, you got paid £5,000. You paid yourself from the company £5,000 a month.
Yeah,
So £5,000 a month. So that's 5 times 12. Quick maths. It's not quick, so I'm using my phone. You're giving yourself 60 grand
yeah.
of money. So out of that 60 grand, you'll need to keep some money aside to pay your student loan, which let's say that is 5 grand to make it nice and simple.
Yeah.
You'd have 5 grand spared to pay your student loan at the end of the year. And what, any other kind of taxes as well? Was it just a student loan?
All my personal taxes. So
So what
the
counts
student
as
loan,
personal tax? Oh,
income tax,
national insurance?
national insurance, that's about it.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you,
And I
okay.
can also take pension out of my personal income as well and put it in the pension tax free.
Did you ever do that?
No, I use my company to put the
Put the
money
money
in.
in the pension?
Yeah. Rather than I paid it out of
Yeah, I think that would make more
my
sense, must be
salary. Yeah.
tax-wise. Okay, so then you need to make sure, let's say you have 10 grand, let's say, to cover all of these all the taxes and your student loan as well. So it's not, no, it may sound like a lot. Okay, I'm taking home 5 grand a month, but actually that money will reduce down if you have to pay for the student loans and all those other taxes. It'll more be, I don't know, 4 grand a month or
Yeah.
3.5 grand a month
Yeah. Yeah.
because of the other stuff that
So
you have to pay.
if you calculate how much tax you're paying at the end of the year, and minus it from what you're paying yourself, every month, and then you can sort of recalculate how much money you're actually making a month, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I'm just going to recap that kind of realize that's quite a lot of information. And I know,
Yeah. One last thing as well is don't forget to pay your accountant. They want to get paid every month too.
yeah, the person that,
Yeah, and you pay them through the business because they are doing accounting for your business.
right, they're not doing it for you. Right.
Yeah, they can do it for you as well, but um, if they do it for you, then you may have to pay them separately for something to do your personal tax. But most of the time, they're doing it for your business.
So I'm just going to recap what we've just discussed around the contractor cost, because I think it's important that people understand exactly the financial implications of becoming a contractor. And it may, there's other things to consider, and it's not as simple as earning 130,000 a year. Because you do have to pay a lot of different taxes and pensions and things like that. So ultimately, out of that 130,000 a year needs to come out your any expenses, your pension, which we've spoken about is not compulsory and that's optional, but again, really, really important that you think about. So you have your pension will come out of that. You've also got kind of your insurance as well, public liability insurance, things like that. And then you've also got your corporation tax, which will all come out of your company, and also any work materials that you need, laptops, headsets, all that stuff, having a mouse, all that things. Then, Stefan paid himself, and out of that salary that he paid himself, he needs to make sure that at the end of the year he has enough money left over to pay his VAT, his national insurance, and his student loan, so kind of his personal taxes as well.
Yeah,
So,
so the VAT is a business expense.
oh, VAT is business,
National insurance is business and personal, um, and the student loan is a personal.
is a personal. Okay, okay, okay. So a lot of different expenses there. What about life insurance?
Yes, yeah, it's an
Did
important
you
one.
did you change?
So I
So
had to take out my own life insurance because one of the benefits you get when you're employed sometimes is that the company will offer you life assurance. So if anything happens to you, they'll give a payout to your family.
yeah, I have
And
that at the moment. I think it's like 4.5 times my salary.
yeah,
And they do that so it kind of can cover your mortgage if you have one.
yeah. So I did not, I was not employed by anybody, just employed by myself. So you have to give yourself some benefits.
Mm,
So life insurance was an important one. So I did that through the company again. So if anything happens to me, there should be a payout
for
from the
me.
insurance company for yes
For
for
me.
you, and also income insurance as well. So this is one maybe a bit more personal, but if, for example, contracts dry up and I can't get a contract, then my income dries up, and therefore insurance company should help me out.
Okay.
Yeah, so those are just some protection.
But I feel like that's quite I can't think of another word other than that's quite good of you to have that stuff set up and have that pension set up. I just can't imagine a lot of people do that.
I
I just
think if you
cannot
no,
imagine
I think
people
I
put
think most
money
people
into their
do.
pension,
I think most
like
people
set up
do.
their own pension. Do you think?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, especially, contractors are not always young. A lot of people have been in the game for 10, 15 years doing
Mm,
contracting. They've got a family, or they may have a family, and so they will definitely have things to look after their family.
okay. Like a pension,
Yeah,
including the
pension,
pension.
including a pension, but the life insurance as well. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Because I feel like with things like pension, they always, I mean, I was on TV and stuff, they always make it out that young people don't have pensions or we don't sign up for it and
Mm,
things like that. And then even with the life insurance, I was on like a money webinar thing the other day through work. And the guy on there was saying, oh, make sure if you're buying a property or whatever, you make sure you have the life insurance. Because he's like, so many people I know, and critical health cover. Because, like he said, so many people who come into the branch, something's happened, they've lost their job, and they've got no protection at all because they never took one out.
yeah,
So it's, or they, relying on work, or whatever. So it's good that you set that up.
yeah.
Um, okay, well, moving on. So you were a contractor for how long?
It was.
in
roughly two
total?
years.
About 2 years. Okay, so a decent length of time. What would you say are the pros and cons then of being a contractor since you were at it for 2 years, in the game for 2 years?
Yeah. So I think one of the pros is flexibility.
Mm,
So you can take jobs that you want. You don't have to take the first contract that comes at you. Although if you've not had a contract for a while, it can be tempting to just take the first one that comes. Um, and you can also take gaps between contracts. So if you want to take extended holidays, lots of time off work, then you can do that. When a contract ends, you just don't take another one.
okay.
Yeah.
So
So
great if you have
yeah,
children.
and because you've been paid larger amounts of money. Like we've been talking about this 130K into the company account. You should have a company, hopefully, that's built up a bit of money that can continue to pay you every month.
Okay.
So even if you don't have a contract, the company still got cash to pay you, and you're still employed by your own company,
Right, I see.
right?
I see.
Um, Variety, as a contractor, this is one of the things that made me become a contractor. You can take different projects and work for different companies. You can even work for more than one project at a time or
Mm,
company at a time. So you could even make a deal where with one company you work Monday and Tuesday, another company you work Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday.
right.
You know, so flexibility to take any contract that you want to work on the type of things that you want at the time you want. That type of thing. Um, the pro, a financial benefit is a pro because you're being paid into the company these large amounts of money, um, which is good, and it gives you that stability because you need it. Unfortunately, with contracting, you don't have the stability of being employed, and if as long as you don't hand in your notice and you're employed, or you don't do something that can get you fired, basically, um, then you've got a job, you know, or you're not made redundant. But with contracting, you don't have that protection, and so you don't have that financial security. So you need to look after what you're making financially. Do not spend all of the money. Make sure that you're looking after the books of the company, the accounting, your accountant's doing their job well, um, to make sure that if you do come into rough times, and rough times did happen, there was that change with IR35, there was COVID, all that sort of stuff. Um, if those times do happen, you do have some backup.
Mm-hmm.
Politics is a pro as well. As an employee, you've always got politics in the company, but as a contractor, you come in, you're kind of on the periphery. You're never in the middle of things,
Yeah.
and so people will just, don't burden you with politics. You don't have to worry about promotion, all that stuff. You're just
Yeah, you
being
don't have to
paid.
be involved in any of that.
Yeah, you're just being paid for what you come there to do, and that's it. You can still build relationships, but you don't have to get involved in politics.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I think one of the pros as well, because you can move around and do different things, you can build a network of people and meet a lot of people. And it's really important that you do that as a contractor. You have to build a network of people because those people are going to be where your next contract comes from. Cons. I think one of the cons for me is that if you're a contractor, there is no HR. There's no one to run to or to go to if you're having issues at work. So you just have to deal with whatever you get. And if it's somewhere where you can't work, well, at least you have the flexibility to leave. Sometimes you still have to do a notice period, but at least you've got the flexibility to leave.
Mm.
Yeah, again, the lack of job security is a con, I think. But we've already discussed that. As a contractor as well, people think that you can work less or you do less work. You just do basically the bits that you've come to do and then you leave. But actually, there's some cases there's a lot more work because now you have to run a business, you have to do tax, you have to do your own personal tax returns, and you have to manage financially everything that's going on.
Mm.
So there's an admin overhead of that. And every month, I didn't even think about it, but I had to release invoices every week to the company. And so on the invoice day, I was there, I forgot to do my invoice, and I had to just log in. And fortunately, everything is on Google Drive that I have. So I just log in and had to create my invoice at work sometimes. So I did that.
Yeah, because I remember like when you were, yeah, contracting, I'd be like, oh, what are you doing? Like, oh, I'm doing admin, doing business stuff. I feel like you was always doing something related to your business.
Yeah, you got to keep on top of it, otherwise it just builds up in a pile. Um, One of the cons, I guess this is another expense as well. You've got to expense your own training or career progression, and that's a business expense. So if I need skills that will help me in the market to get more contracts or to do my job better, there's no company that is going to say, oh yeah, we're going to send you on a training course. No one is sending me on any training course. I
Mm,
got to send myself. So I've got to expense through my company to send myself on a training course so I can learn certain things. And that's another thing that you need to sort of count in, because over the years of doing contracting, you you're going to have to keep your skills up to date. Yeah, there's no benefits as a con, so you got to make sure you look after yourself. I think one of the cons as well is that sometimes as a contractor, people have views about you. Um, and they expect things from you. They expect you to be very high performing and to be the best guy on the team or the most skilled guy on the team. And that's not always the case. Sometimes they just needed to fill a seat,
I
you know?
agree. From my experience of working with contractors, that is not always the case.
Yeah. So,
Many a time a contractor's doing the exact same work I am.
yeah. And they're asking the same questions that you're asking.
Yeah,
So you have to remember that they're human and they don't know everything and they're literally here because somebody opened a role and said, I need someone and I don't want to go through the trouble of hiring them, so I'm just going to bring a contractor in.
yeah.
That's about it, really.
One thing that I wanted to touch upon super quickly um, was around kind of the pay aspect of things. So you will obviously kind of pay yourself through the company. And I've heard stories around, it being more lucrative or kind of having evading tax or, doing dodgy stuff with your pay. Is that your experience?
I think this is a really interesting one because although we've talked about all this money that's paid to the company, we've not really talked about the money that's paid to you. And at the end of the day, the only money that you can really spend in any way that you like, go to restaurants and all sorts of stuff, is the
Mm,
money that's paid to you. You have to pay your bills from that money and all sorts. And so you cannot pay yourself the full amount of money every month from the company because you've got all these expenses. And so you have to pay yourself in two ways. The first is PAYE, which is normal salary pay. Out of PAYE, you have to pay national insurance, and that is taxed at normal tax, right? So
mm,
20% if you're under 50 grand,
yeah,
over 50 grand, it's 40%, and over 150 grand, it's 45% income tax. The other way to pay yourself is through dividends. So because you are the owner of your own company, and you can only do this if you set up your limited company, because you're the owner of the company, you can pay yourself dividends. And you can choose how much dividends to pay yourself, but at the end of the day, dividends has less tax than income tax,
right.
right?
Okay. Then
So
PAYE.
yeah, then PUA, sorry. So you would typically pay yourself more dividends than you would PAYE.
Right.
It's still taxed though,
But it's a
but
lesser it's a
it's a
lesser rate
lesser
of tax.
it's a lesser rate of tax, and so you're better off to pay yourself more dividends than PAYE. Yeah,
Okay.
so you pay less tax essentially overall by doing contracting, but that doesn't mean you're being paid more overall, right? Because a lot of contractors do not want to be paid more than 50K. And the reason why is because when you pay yourself more than 50K, you then have to pay 45%, sorry, 40% income tax,
Mm,
right? And 40% income tax, if you do not need the money month to month, It's
Doesn't
just
make
money.
sense.
It's just money you don't need. So you're better off paying corporation tax on that money rather than income tax on that money. So a lot of contractors leave the money in the company, let the company build with money, and then pay the corporation tax, which is a lot less than the 40% income tax. So most contractors that I know only pay themselves up to 50 grand a year.
Mm,
One day when they want to close the company, let's say they want to stop contracting, they will close the company and take out all of the money. And when they do that, they will pay a different rate of tax.
right. And you have gone through that process. So
Yeah,
we will, we this episode, you being a contractor, this is part one. So in the part two, we'll talk about the process that you went through of kind of closing down that company and what that looks like.
yeah,
But it's interesting that you say that they'll cap themselves at 50K, because you're right. If you don't need that additional bit of money,
mm,
there's no need to take it out. You may as well let that company, let the money sit there and grow until the point of you need that money for, because you're buying a new house, because you're want to send your kids off to a private school, because you want to do an extension on the house. Until you actually need that lump sum of money, pay yourself the 50K. If you've got your partner, that income's coming in, and if your cushy hour is,
mm.
then it's fine, as opposed to giving yourself a 70, 80, 90K salary when actually you don't really need it.
Yes, and also if you pay yourself that much money, then you can obviously you can save it as well in your own
Mm,
bank account, but you'll have to pay the higher tax on it, and your company will have less money. So if you do see hard times,
you've
your
got less of a
company,
cushion.
yeah, you've got less of a cushion in the company.
Okay, interesting. Interesting. So if you can kind of quickly kind of run through, what would your lessons be of being a contractor for 2 years?
I think my lessons are to be careful about the jobs that you take. Ask a lot of questions in the interviews because, as I said, the interviews are really short. You've got to make the most of that time. So ask a lot of questions, especially about what they need from you, because there are a lot of contractors out there who are filling seats because um, companies just want to fill seats for budget reasons and other reasons. So you've got to make sure that they actually want something from you and what they expect you to deliver on the contract. Otherwise, you could be in a job that's not very enjoyable and you're just going to have to find another contract. I think always remember that your contract can be terminated at any
Okay.
time. So be careful with your accounting. You don't know when the next contract will come.
Okay, that's a good tip there.
Exuding confidence is also helpful, like
Mm,
with getting a contract and just working as a contractor, because again, people have a perception that you must know everything because you're being paid a massive amount of money, um, or at least they perceive that you are. And so you have to exude confidence even if you don't know everything. I think a massive lesson as well that I learned is choose the right accountant. When I first became a contractor, I chose an accountant that was recommended to me by another contractor. And I think that accountant may have been a good accountant for him, but is not a good accountant for me, you know? And we go back and forth again on this podcast sometimes about the differences for, being black in industry, being black in life. And one of the things that you have to always remember is your relationship with people,
mm,
and you have to have a good relationship with your accountant,
yeah,
right? It's really, really important because you need to ask them questions. You want the best advice, um, and tax and all that stuff is really complicated. So you want someone that you can trust. So yeah, choose the right accountant, one that actually listens to you.
not someone who's going to I'm going to say make any mistakes, but it's not necessarily make mistakes, but somebody who you feel like's got your best intentions in mind.
Yeah. I think I'm going to add one as well because thinking about that, one of the important things is remember you're running a business if you set up a limited company.
Mm,
So you must be on top of the accounting. And accounting is it's a bit complicated, but you can get your head around it,
Yeah.
right? You don't need to know everything, but you must be on top of it because you are responsible for the accounts and the tax and HMRC,
You're
not the
legally
accountant.
liable. Yeah.
Yeah,
And we were talking about this the other day, isn't it? It's not, you can't turn around to HMRC and be like, oh, I didn't know this was happening because my accountant said that was all in hand, or
yeah,
oh, I didn't fill in my self-assessment form because oh, my accountant said this. No, it's your business and you ultimately are accountable for everything that happens. You're legally, accountable for it. So you can't, so you have to be happy to take that responsibility of running your own business.
yes,
And I think that is something that people don't think about when they talk about being a contractor, is that if you take the route that you did, that you have to be in a mindset that this is my business. If you want to do the umbrella company option where
yeah,
someone else does it, then yeah, you can kind of, wash your hands of that. You're not as involved. That's not an option that I think we would feel, well, you didn't take, and that's not one that I would feel comfortable taking. So if you're going to run your own business, you've got to step up and act like it.
yeah. You must be capable. Let's put it this way: you must be capable of checking your accountant's work.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly that. And I think maybe we'll have an episode on how to, a quick kind of 20-minute episode on how to kind of choose a right accountant as well. Because again, I think that's going to help our listeners who may want to go down that road.
Yeah. And finally, build your network. Um, every time you're working in these companies, you're working with new people, you're meeting people, you must build a network of people, you must like communicate and just try and be personable because you're definitely going to need it later. This is where your bulk of contracts will come from in the future.
Yeah. And you use your network to get your second contract,
Yeah,
really.
contracts come through recruiters, but the best contracts come through your contacts.
Yeah. Yeah. And then my last kind of two questions is, do you think both people could be, if you're in a relationship, do you think both people in that relationship could be a contractor? And sorry, your relationship and you live together. You
Yeah.
have shared um kind of financial responsibilities.
Yes, definitely, I think
So
so.
we could have been a contractor at the same time.
Yeah, I think so, definitely. But I think one of the things is that if you're a person who's looking to get a mortgage and you're both contractors, I think you're probably
Oof,
gonna have a problem.
it's gonna struggle.
Yeah, but if you're not trying to like get a mortgage or a hefty loan or something like that, then I don't see why not. All you have to do is just really think about um, financially, do you have backup? Do you have protection if you do fall on hard times? If you're both in the same industry, you could both fall on hard times at the same
In
time.
time, yeah.
If you're in different industries, then it may not, coincide at the same time.
Mm.
So yeah, just look after financially all the books.
Yeah, and I guess it's also, take us for example, if we were to both become contractors again, or you again and me to start with, would we have two separate businesses, or would we have one business and then we're two employees that sit underneath that? I don't know which one would be most tax efficient, but it's things to think about like that.
Yeah, yeah,
And
definitely.
obviously, you know, you would only do the latter. So having one company with the both of you sitting underneath it, if you felt like you could trust, you fully trust your partner.
Yeah.
And then my final question is, would you ever become a contractor again? Because obviously we know now that you are employed, you have an employer.
Yeah.
Uh, would you do that again, or was the experience burned and scarred you for life?
I wouldn't say the experience has burned and scarred me yet. I wouldn't rule it out. I'd probably, think about doing it again. But I just think that, my experience in contracting maybe doesn't suit my personality. Because as I mentioned before, sometimes you don't deal with the politics, so you're on the periphery. But being on the periphery also means that sometimes you're not involved in the journey, or sometimes you're
Mm,
not all the way considered a team member or part of the whole project.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
You're just seen as a temporary resource who will be
yeah,
gone soon.
yeah. That's so
Um,
true. That's how I view them.
Yeah,
contractors. You haven't got as much skin in the game, because you're getting paid, five, £600 a day. You're just here for the money, and in 3 months' time, you'll be gone.
yeah. And that doesn't really suit my personality because I want to feel like I am part of the journey,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I
You want
want
to
to
be
feel
all
like
in.
yeah, I'm all in. So um, for that reason, I wouldn't be doing it anytime soon,
Mm,
but I wouldn't rule it out.
okay, okay. So, thank you, Stefan, for being a guest on the Ordinary Black Professional.
Yeah,
And letting me pick your brain about what it's like to be a contractor. We will be having a part two, and that part two will be talking more about the specific types of feelings and experiences that you've had being a contractor, as you kind of walked us through the practicalities of it.
yeah,
What was it actually like being a contractor? Like, what was the reality of it? What made you decide to go perm? And yeah, just more feelings around kind of being a contractor, talking more around kind of some of the highs and some of the lows as well. So yeah, stay tuned for that part two. Look out for it because it will be coming soon, and we will wrap it up there.
yeah.
So thank you again, Stefan, for being there, for letting us or letting me pick your brain, and for everyone listening, we'll catch up with you next week. Bye.
Bye.
If you have any questions or dilemmas, email us on ordinaryblackprofessionals@gmail.com, or we can be found on Instagram and Twitter @ordinaryblackprofessionals. Also, don't forget to follow us, subscribe, and leave a rating and comment.